Would you judge a man by his clothes? This manager did, and it cost him everything. The luxury showroom gleamed like a palace. Spotless white marble floors stretched endlessly beneath glass walls that caught the reflections of dazzling lights above. Sleek high-end sports cars, each a masterpiece of engineering, lined up like works of art, untouchable and perfect. This was the kind of place where millionaires casually dropped fortunes on cars, simply because they could. And then there was Thomas. He pushed open the heavy glass door, its metallic hinges letting out a subtle groan as he stepped inside. Instantly, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations quieted for a split second before awkwardly resuming. Thomas's boots, thick with dried mud from tending his ranch all morning, left faint, dusty traces across the pristine marble floor. His flannel shirt, damp with sweat from hours under the blistering sun, clashed violently with the sleek, sterile sophistication of the showroom. His jeans, faded and torn at the knees, had clearly seen more fields than city streets. Even the air around him felt different. While the showroom was filled with the scent of polished leather and expensive cologne, Thomas carried with him the faint, earthy smell of fresh soil and open country. To many here, it was as if he didn't belong. A few salesmen stole quick, judgmental glances before turning back to their conversations. A couple admiring a cherry-red sports car gave him a once-over before whispering to each other, poorly masking their curiosity and disdain. Then there was Ethan Collins, the showroom manager. He stood by the front desk, scrolling through his phone, a smug grin on his face. But the moment Thomas walked in, Ethan's demeanor shifted. His jaw stiffened, the corners of his mouth flattened into a thin, disapproving line, and his eyes narrowed as if Thomas were an unwanted guest in an exclusive club. Thomas barely made it 3 steps inside before Ethan intercepted him. "Sir," Ethan began, his voice oozing with forced politeness. "Can I help you with something?" Thomas, unfazed, glanced around at the luxury vehicles before answering. "Yeah, I was hoping to take a look at the new limited edition model. I heard you had one in stock." Ethan let out a short, almost amused breath. He gave Thomas a quick once-over, taking in the dirt-streaked boots, the rough hands, and the worn-out baseball cap that looked like it had survived decades of hard labor. "We don't exactly do test drives for just anyone," Ethan replied, his condescension thinly veiled. "This isn't the kind of place where you just browse." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "That's so." Ethan crossed his arms, his smirk widening. "You might have better luck across town. There's a dealership that specializes in used trucks, probably more your speed." Before Thomas could respond, the glass door swung open again with a soft hiss, and a cool breeze swept in. Ethan didn't even turn to see who it was. His focus remained locked on Thomas, determined to push him back out the door. But Thomas stood his ground. "I'm not looking for a used truck," Thomas said evenly. "I came here for a reason." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Sir, this is a luxury dealership. Our clientele is selective." The word lingered in the air like a challenge. Nearby, a younger salesman in his 20s, Ryan, sharp-suited but visibly nervous, shifted awkwardly. He clearly overheard the exchange and looked torn between stepping in or staying out of it. Ultimately, he said nothing. Thomas adjusted his cap and met Ethan's gaze directly. "Selective, huh?" "That's right," Ethan replied, smug as ever. The tension in the room thickened, pulling tighter with every second. Even a woman inspecting a silver sports car shot a glance in their direction before quickly looking away, pretending not to notice. Thomas sighed and shoved his calloused hands into his pockets. "You know," he began, "I've spent my life working hard, built everything I have from the ground up. And the funny thing about money? It doesn't always dress the way you expect it to." Ethan didn't flinch. If anything, he looked more entertained. "I'm sure that's true," he sneered. "But we like to keep the floors clean here." His eyes drifted to the muddy footprints Thomas had left behind. "So, unless you're here for something realistic," he lazily gestured toward the exit. The younger salesman, Ryan, shifted uncomfortably again, but Ethan shot him a glare that kept him frozen in place. Thomas let out a low, knowing chuckle. He'd seen this before. Men like Ethan, different faces, same attitude. He almost turned to leave. Almost. "Dad, sorry I'm late." The new voice sliced through the tension like a blade. Ethan's smugness evaporated as he slowly turned toward the entrance. A tall man in a tailored navy blue suit strolled in, moving with the effortless confidence of someone who had spent his life in boardrooms and penthouses. A sleek watch glinted on his wrist as he approached Thomas, flashing a wide, easy smile. "Daniel." Thomas greeted him with a small nod. Daniel grinned. "Got caught up on a call. Hope I didn't keep you waiting too long." He clapped Thomas on the shoulder with a familiarity that left Ethan gaping. Ethan's jaw went slack. His eyes darted between Thomas and Daniel, struggling to process the scene unfolding before him. He's your?" Ethan stammered. Daniel's smile dropped, replaced by a cold edge. "My father," he confirmed. Ethan's face turned pale. "I see you've met him," Daniel continued, his tone dangerously light. I didn't realize," Ethan stuttered, his once commanding voice now a pathetic whisper. "Didn't realize what exactly?" Daniel pressed. I didn't know he was." Ethan tried, but Daniel cut him off. "Rich." The word hit like a slap. Ethan winced. "Because that's the only reason you care now, isn't it?" Daniel didn't wait for an answer. "I was planning on buying 3 cars today. Cash." Gasps echoed softly through the room. Even the customers who had been feigning disinterest now openly stared. "But I think I'll take my business somewhere else," Daniel finished flatly. "Wait, Mr. Carter." Ethan lunged forward, desperation dripping from every word. But Daniel was done. "No," he snapped. "You judged a man by his clothes, his boots, the dirt on his jeans. And now? You've lost everything." He turned to his father. "Let's go." Together, they headed for the door. But Ethan wasn't giving up that easily. "Please," he called after them, scrambling to follow. "Mr. Carter, Daniel, just hear me out." Thomas paused at the door, turning just enough to glance over his shoulder. "Hear you out," he echoed. "About what?" "How you decide who deserves respect." Ethan's face twisted into a weak, pleading smile. "It was a misunderstanding." Daniel scoffed. "The only thing you misunderstood was who held the checkbook." And with that, they walked out. The heavy glass doors swung shut behind them, leaving a stunned silence in their wake. Inside, Ethan stood frozen, his career crumbling around him. The younger salesman, Ryan, finally muttered under his breath, "Man, you really screwed up." The regional manager walked in seconds later, his face grim. "Ethan, my office." Now, Ethan's shoulders sagged. He already knew his job was gone. Outside, Thomas and Daniel reached Daniel's sleek black SUV. "You handled that well," Daniel commented, starting the engine. Thomas chuckled. "You too," watching him squirm. "Not gonna lie, that was satisfying." Daniel grinned, but his face grew serious. "Still, I hate seeing people treat you like that." Thomas sighed, glancing out the window. "Son, it's been happening long before you were born. But today? Today was different. Today we made a point." Daniel nodded. "Let's find a dealership that actually deserves our business." "Sounds good to me," Thomas replied, tipping his cap. As they drove away, the message hung in the air. Respect isn't about money or status. It's about character. Have you ever been judged by your appearance before people even knew who you were? Or seen someone else treated unfairly just because they didn't look the part? It happens more than we realize. The only way to change it is to call it out when we see it. Respect isn't something people should have to earn. It's something everyone deserves. If this story made you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Let's keep this conversation going, because at the end of the day, character matters more than status.